Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli back out here in the shop with another hot new finesse tip for you. Nico rigging is all the rage right now, and you hear about it a lot. But there's a variation of Nico rigging called the chicken rig. And the great thing about the chicken rig is it gives you a Nico style presentation. It gives you a very unique action on the fall and on the bottom. But the chicken rig gives you the ability to fish it in places you cannot fish a traditional Nico rig. And it's the real bonus of the chicken rig is it's virtually snagless, weedless. You can fish it in all forms of cover. Let me show you the setup, and it's really, really simple. Components are simple, and there's a couple different bait options you can use. You know, the one that I've been using a lot is a brand new worm that I designed by Berkeley Power Bait. It's called a Flute Worm. We make it in 3 sizes, but the 5'7" is probably my favorite size for the chicken rig technique. You could also use a traditional straight tail worm. You could also use a regular soft stick bait like a general. But there it goes. There's a Berkeley Power Bait Flute Worm in the 5.7. If you look at it, it's got a couple unique features that make it the perfect worm for the chicken rig. The one are these little ridges that you're going to see, and they're great for O-rings if you're wacky or Nico rigging, but it's going to help us in the chicken rig, and I'm going to show you that in a second. The other nice thing about the Flute Worm for the chicken rig is that blunt end, that really fat end, because we're going to be using a tail weight or a nail weight like a traditional Nico rig. The next thing is the hook, and really this is the perfect hook for when you're using the chicken rig, and it's called a finesse Nico. Depending on the size of the bait, I like it in a number 1 or a 1/0. If you go down to the 4.7, you can use a number 2. If you go up to the real big flute worm, you can use a 2 or a 3/0. But for the 5.7, a number 1 or a 1/0 finesse Nico hook by VMC. And then the weight. You know, the weight is real easy. You can use a traditional nail weight, or you could use, this is my favorite for this chicken rig, is called the VMC Half Moon Wacky Weight. And it's like a traditional nail weight, but it's got just a little rounded blunt end on it, which makes it real nice. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take that flute worm and we're going to insert that weight in the fat end, in the blunt end. And the great thing about the flute worm is there's a little hole there. It's a little divot, so you know right where to put it, and when you push it down, that weight sort of becomes flush to the worm, and it makes a real nice surface. And we're going to see that in the tank here in a second. The next thing is just tie on your finesse Nico, and I've already got one tied on here, my little ice fishing rod. And if you look at that hook, it's pretty unique because it's got that VMC patented Nico shape, which is a great shape for the hookup percentage, but it has these little tiny fluorocarb spines on it. And that's important in this chicken rig because once we rig it, it's going to be able to hold the worm in place as we finesse it and shake it through cover, grass, wood, trees, around docks, brush, all that stuff, okay? So here's the unique thing about the chicken rig, and this is what makes it a chicken rig, is that we're going to Texas rig this hook on there. We're not going to wacky it. We're not going to Nico it through an O-ring. We're actually going to Texas rig it. And I talked about those high spots in the flute worm. I'm going to go to the middle high spot, and there it goes. You can see it. It's a little bump out with a line in the middle for the O-ring. On the chicken rig, I'm not going to use an O-ring, but I'm going to use that as a measurement spot. And I'm going to go in that fat part and push it back out. Now I'm going to go all the way through. I'm actually going to turn the bait on itself. Watch this. And now, when you look at that hook, the top of the hook is dead set in the middle. The back of the hook is going to go perfectly over that bottom bump out. And the great thing about that is it lets me rig that point weedless, but it still has a lot of ability to push out of there and catch your fish. So here we go. If you look at it, here's our chicken rig. We've got the bait Texas rigged from the middle to the bottom segment. We've got our weight in the back. So this is a Nico rig that's totally weedless. And we have the ability to fish it in and around cover, through grass, through brush, and it won't get hung up like a traditional Nico or wacky rig will get hung up. The last thing I want to show you about the chicken rig is the amazing action on the fall and on the bottom. And if you look at it, you can kind of see that that weight is going to draw it backwards. It's going to sort of fall backwards, and it's going to fall erratically, a little different every time. But once it gets to the bottom, that weight's going to bang on the bottom, just like a Nico rig. It's going to put up a little dust, a little gravel, a little smoke on the bottom. It's going to make a little noise. And then the great thing about that flute worm is that single-sided tapered tail. And you're going to see that in the tank as it's on the bottom. And again, the chicken rig, you're going to be able to fish everywhere. But let's look at it and in the tank, and I'm going to show you. There it goes. There's that sort of erratic fall, but look how it stands up on the bottom. Look at that worm standing straight up. There's that big weight kicking up the silt. Look at it. Look at it. And watch that tail as I shake it. Look at that little tiny tapered tail on that worm just shaking. So you have a little bit of a unique erratic backward fall. You've got the weight. Look at it. Dancing up and down, kicking up silt. And last but not least, when you shake it, look at that little quiver in the tail. It's unbelievable. Look at that thing. Very unique fall, very unique action. And because it's rigged chicken style, it's totally weedless. Listen to me. If you like wacky rigging and Nico rigging, but you can't fish it in certain places, get yourself a few of those VMC Nico hooks, some flute worms, some of those weights, rig that bait chicken style, and let the magic begin in any form of cover you want. Mike Iaconelli out here in the shop talking about the chicken rig. Okay.